In 1986, Britain built some truly terrible cars. The problem was, nobody knew it yet. A Ford Escort looked like the safe choice. An Austin Montego arrived, packed with futuristic technology that barely seemed capable of surviving contact with reality. And Rover genuinely believed it had built a luxury car that could worry BMW and Mercedes. What buyers actually got were oil leaks, electrical nightmares, disappointing handling, and enough frustration to keep mechanics employed for decades. The worst part, these weren't obscure failures from struggling manufacturers. These were Britain's biggest names. 3 cars, 3 disasters. 1 year that perfectly explained why British buyers eventually started looking elsewhere. These weren't cars people took a gamble on. These were cars people trusted. So how did Ford, Austin and Rover get it so spectacularly wrong? This is 4 Wheels and Fuel. Let's find out.
Are you all in? Yeah! Right. Oh, no, it's a letter. I forgot my email.
Your what?
Joe! He's forgotten his email.
Ford Escort Mark IV. There's something uniquely irritating about a car that manages to become worse without anybody asking it to, which is exactly what Ford achieved with the Escort Mark IV. Because the Mark III Escort had already earned genuine respect during the early 80s. It was sharp enough to feel modern, practical enough for ordinary families, and successful enough that Ford barely needed to reinvent anything. So naturally, they softened it. The Mark IV arrived in March 1986, looking cleaner and more aerodynamic than before. But underneath the fresh bumpers and smoother panels sat a car that somehow felt less enjoyable almost everywhere. The steering became heavier, yet less communicative. The chassis became softer without becoming more comfortable. And the entire driving experience suddenly felt strangely numb, like Ford had quietly removed the personality during the facelift and hoped nobody important would notice. Unfortunately, people noticed almost immediately, especially anyone who had driven the previous Escort. Because unlike the lively Mark III, the new car behaved with all the enthusiasm of damp office carpet. Push through corners and the front end starts leaning earlier than expected. The steering never quite tells you what the tyres are doing underneath, and every fast road simply becomes an exercise in discovering new forms of understeer, which becomes deeply awkward once you realize this was supposed to be the improved version. Ford also made the mistake of keeping the Escort visually familiar enough that buyers expected the same character underneath. But the moment the road becomes interesting, the illusion collapses quickly. The car doesn't feel dangerous exactly, just disappointingly sanitized. And honestly, that might have been worse, because at least chaotic cars create stories. The Escort mostly created shrugs. Under the bonnet, the 1.6 I produced 89 brake horsepower and 134 Newton-meters of torque through a 5-speed manual gearbox. In something weighing around 880 kilograms, Ford managed 0 to 60 miles per hour in roughly 9.5 seconds, and a top speed around 111 miles per hour, which sounded respectable enough in 1986, until you actually drove the thing and realized none of the performance felt particularly exciting. Even motorway refinement felt strangely unfinished. When noise arrives early, the suspension becomes fidgety over rough surfaces, and the entire cabin develops rattles with the sort of commitment usually associated with percussion instruments. Yet dads across Britain kept buying them anyway, because it was an Escort. Ford had spent years building trust so successfully that buyers assumed the new one had to be good automatically. Instead, many owners ended up discovering their dependable family hatchback now drove like a cautious apology. And that really sums up the Mark IV Escort perfectly. Nothing catastrophic, nothing dramatic, just a deeply frustrating downgrade pretending to be progress. In 1986, a Ford Escort Mark IV 1.61 cost roughly £7,000, which meant British buyers were now paying good money for the privilege of driving something noticeably worse than the car it replaced.
If you enjoy the stories on Four Wheels and Fuel, you can support the channel by buying me a coffee. Just click on the link or scan the QR code. It helps keep these nostalgic car stories alive. Let's continue.
A lot of activity in the city today, but now for his thoughts of
If you think I'm a wicked lady, if you're tempted by my evil charm, to be fast, way ahead of my class. Does a little bit of what you fancy do you harm? I'm a child of the new generation. I was born to be held in your arms. So why not try just a touch if your heart beats too much? And a little bit of what you fancy do you harm? Oh yeah! And a little bit of what you fancy.
the Montego 1.6L. Love at first sight.
Austin Montego. Some cars fail slowly over time. The Austin Montego arrived broken spiritually from the beginning. British Leyland introduced it, promising modern technology, improved refinement, and a proper step into the future for British family cars. Instead, the Montego became rolling evidence that giving engineers ambitious ideas means absolutely nothing if the factory forgets how to assemble the car properly afterwards. And nowhere did that become more embarrassing than the dashboard. Because somebody at Austin genuinely believed British families wanted a car that talked to them. Not metaphorically, literally. The Montego's electronic voice warning system was supposed to feel futuristic in 1984. By 1986, it mostly felt like being scolded by malfunctioning kitchen equipment. Owners complained constantly about warning messages activating randomly, alarms triggering for no reason, and the entire system behaving like it deeply regretted existing. Then the mechanical problems started joining in. The S-Series engine developed a reputation for oil leaks with almost industrial consistency.
Cooling systems overheated so frequently that many owners probably spent more time watching temperature gauges than the road itself. Interior trim loosened alarmingly quickly. Electrical faults appeared almost recreationally, and build quality varied so wildly between cars, it occasionally felt like Austin employees were improvising during assembly, which, judging by some panel gaps, may not have been entirely impossible. The truly painful part is that the Montego desperately wanted to seem advanced. The styling looked modern enough. The cabin tried introducing digital features ordinary British buyers hadn't really seen before. Austin clearly understood the market was changing. The problem was execution, because every promising idea immediately collided with quality control that appeared to be operating under emotional distress. Driving the Montego only made things worse. The steering feels vague, the chassis lacks composure, and despite the car's attempts to position itself as a refined, modern family saloon, the entire experience feels strangely flimsy underneath pressure. Rough roads unsettle the suspension constantly, while higher speeds introduce vibrations and noises, suggesting various components are beginning independent escape attempts underneath the bodywork. Under the bonnet sits a 1.6-litre S-Series inline-4, producing 84 brake horsepower and 128 Newton-meters of torque through a 5-speed manual gearbox. In a car weighing around 1,050 kilograms, that gave the Montego 0 to 60 miles per hour in roughly 11 seconds, and a top speed around 105 miles per hour, which would have been acceptable in 1986 if the rest of the car had worked properly around it. But it didn't. And British buyers became painfully aware of that very quickly. Because while Austin kept advertising innovation, owners kept returning to dealerships asking why their supposedly modern family car sounded like loose furniture while leaking fluids onto the driveway. The Montego didn't simply disappoint people, it exhausted them. In 1986, an Austin Montego 1.6 S-Series cost roughly £6,500, which meant thousands of buyers accidentally spent family car money on something with the structural confidence of a temporary building. If giant American V8s, irresponsible amounts of tyre smoke, and engines larger than some British flats sound more entertaining than malfunctioning dashboards, check out 4 Wheels and Fuel USA. Link is in the description after the video.
It's taken the designer's art, the engineer's vision, to create the new British luxury saloon, to combine aerodynamics with beauty and stature, to balance smoothness of ride with full-blooded power, and to design a car that soothes and comforts, leaving the pressures of the day far behind. Prestige, power, performance. The new Rover 800 series. Engineering in a finer form.
Rover 800. The Rover 800 might actually be the saddest car here, because unlike the Escort or Montego, this wasn't supposed to be ordinary transport for average families. This was supposed to restore national pride. Rover launched the 800 in July 1986 as Britain's answer to executive German saloons. The company genuinely believed this car could challenge BMW and Mercedes while re-establishing Rover as a serious luxury manufacturer again. Then customers started driving them, and the entire fantasy collapsed almost immediately. The first problem was the engine. Rover fitted the new 820i with its N-Series 16-valve unit, which looked impressive on paper, right up until it started distributing oil across engine bays and driveways throughout Britain with alarming generosity. Owners complained constantly about leaks, inconsistent reliability, and mechanical refinement that never remotely matched the premium image Rover desperately wanted to project. Then came the suspension. The Rover 800 rode softly enough at low speed, but the moment roads became faster or rougher, the chassis started feeling underdamped and strangely uncontrolled. Body movement increases awkwardly through corners. The car never settles properly over uneven surfaces, and the entire driving experience lacks the composure buyers expected from something positioned against German executive saloons. And that became the real humiliation, because BMW and Mercedes already knew how to build expensive cars that felt solid. The Rover mostly felt ambitious. Inside, things initially appeared promising enough. The dashboard looked modern, the equipment levels felt generous, and Rover clearly tried creating a premium atmosphere for buyers upgrading from ordinary British saloons. Unfortunately, the illusion rarely survived long-term ownership. Electrical gremlins began appearing early. Trim quality disappointed buyers expecting luxury standards. And beneath the polished marketing sat a car that simply didn't feel engineered thoroughly enough to survive scrutiny beside its European rivals. Which became especially painful because the Rover replaced the SD1, a car buyers genuinely loved despite its flaws. Instead of improving on that legacy, Rover delivered something that felt corporate, fragile, and strangely unfinished underneath the expensive presentation. Under the bonnet, the 820i produced 120 brake horsepower and 168 Newton-meters of torque through a 5-speed manual gearbox. In a car weighing around 1,300 kilograms, Rover claimed 0 to 60 miles per hour in roughly 9 seconds, and a top speed around 125 miles per hour. But honestly, none of that mattered once owners started dealing with the rest of the experience. Because luxury buyers can forgive many things. Feeling short-changed is not one of them. And the Rover 800 constantly created the impression that corners had been cut somewhere important. In 1986, a Rover 800 820i cost roughly £12,000, which meant British executives could now spend serious money on a luxury saloon that embarrassed itself the moment somebody parked a BMW nearby. In 1986, British buyers thought they were making sensible decisions. They walked into Ford showrooms expecting the dependable Escort they already trusted. They walked into Austin dealerships believing modern technology meant progress. And they walked into Rover convinced Britain could finally build a luxury car to challenge the Germans. What they got instead were compromises, breakdowns, disappointments, and a growing suspicion that somebody, somewhere, had oversold the brochure. 3 trusted badges,
3 very different failures, and 1 very expensive lesson for anyone buying British in 1986. Tell us which one you'd have avoided. If you enjoy the stories on 4 Wheels and Fuel, you can support the channel by buying me a coffee. Link is in the description. And on that bombshell, this is 4 Wheels and Fuel. See you next time.